Hey, everybody, welcome to Battle Language. This is a roundtable discussion about something related to the Dune board game. And in this video, I'm joined by my esteemed panel of Jaded, Melister, and GJ, and we are going to be talking about once per game Karama effects for all of the factions, along with a ranking of them. We'll see if the four of us, or at least three of us, can come to a conclusion about which ones are the best and which ones are the least best out of them. So I think we're just going to go down the list here. We'll describe what it does. We'll talk about the pros and cons, what makes it great, what maybe is going to affect its ranking in some way or another. And then we'll do our final ranking. Does anyone have anything they want to say about these once per game Karama effects in general before we dive in?
Let's not forget they're advanced only. That's probably the big thing. So everything ranking wise is assuming you're going to play advanced. So advisors are a thing, guild can ship whatever they want, and so on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and then there's the elephant in the room of the BG's lack thereof. So I guess, I don't know, count worthless cards as Karamas is one of the abilities.
It's true, but they can do that all the time. So we'll get to them as well. So I guess we're not. This listing here is not alphabetical. It's just
Expansion order.
yeah. It's so. But we're gonna go in this order because that's what we have. So we're gonna start with Atreides. So their once per game Karama effect is that they can look at the entire battle plan. So they'll get to know your leader, what number you're dialing, what weapon, what defense that you're going to play. And again, it bears repeating that the faction sheet for this version of Dune, which is the classic version of Dune, not Dune Conquest or otherwise known as Movie Dune, this version of Dune specifies that when they're using their battle prescience, and they say, yes, I want to see the weapon, they only get to see the weapon. There's no weapon slot. There's no what are you playing in lieu of a weapon if you're not playing a weapon, which for a long time was just going to be a worthless card. But now there are some cards that could be played in lieu of a weapon, for example, reinforcements or harass and withdraw. They do not get to see that. That's not a weapon. And so the faction sheet does specify the weapon. So if what you're playing instead of a weapon is one of those cards, you just say, I'm not playing a weapon. And them using, if Atreides is using their advanced Karama, they still don't get to see that card, even though they're seeing your whole battle plan. Because really you're it's about the weapon and the defense. So no, if that gets should that get changed in the second edition? And we might as well answer that.
Ooh.
What do you guys think? Should it be a slots, or should that be worded in such a way that their prescience has broader reach as it does in Dune Conquest? What do you guys think?
Oh,
I
definitely.
love Conquest. Conquest all the way. No doubt.
Yep.
Yeah, I tend to
Slots
agree.
are just
I
easy
think
to
I
name.
think you want the faction. First of all, I think it's simple and more elegant that they just get to see what the card's going to be. And you're less likely to have these weird, sneaky instances or ambiguity. So I think the battle wheels in Dune Conquest actually they have a label. It's not really a slot per se. It kind of is. We try to explain it that way in the rule book. That when you're holding the cards up against your battle wheel, you put the weapon on one side, defense on the other, or the card you're playing in that slot. And it is I think it's a more elegant way to explain and execute that advantage. So I think if we ever do another edition of Dune, we will follow that model that was set by Dune Conquest. But I've seen this advantage used very effectively against me, and so it's pretty powerful. It is for just one battle. It's not like for this for all of the battles in this turn I'm going to get to do this. It's just one battle. But yeah, it can be very clutch. It gives you all the information that you need to know about who you should play, what you should dial, who's going to die, how much spice you're probably going to be getting for most likely winning that battle. So, yeah, we're not going to necessarily rank it, but that's what it is. Anyone else have any other comments about the Atreides Karama superpower?
It is weird in the sense that like all faction like it's not that useful in first instance because you only have 4 treachery cards in your hand, and if one of them is a Karama, you only have 3 other treachery cards in your hand that you could technically use against your opponent. But against some bullshit that Richese can pull with their their cards or just leader skills, it's really useful.
With basically any of the expansions, I think the advanced Karama really shoots up in how valuable it can be. You just get so much more value out of it, even if you give up one of your treachery cards in your hand for it. Just the ability to know beforehand everything when you're like a bit unsure. Maybe you're playing with X, which kind of meddles with your knowledge. Just being able to go in knowing for sure what you're facing is really, really strong.
Yeah, the unfortunate part is that it's a really good ability that Atreides usually doesn't need.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
to take up a whole slot in your hand, maybe you use that ability, and the Karama took up the space that you might have used to buy a projectile weapon with, and then look at that, they're playing a snooper, and
Yeah.
you really just wish you had the weapon.
Yeah, it definitely, I think, as we alluded to earlier, when you have some of these other expansion factions in the game where Atreides' card knowledge starts to take a little bit of a hit. The Ixians, they've got some card knowledge about the pocket cards, what everyone's dealt at the beginning of the game that Atreides doesn't have. They may know a card that Harkonnen is getting for free because they put it on top of the deck. And CHOAM, they can trade a card with their ally. And Richese, if they have managed to get a hold of one or especially more than one of their own cards, they can just give to their ally. So there's some uncertainty for Atreides there. And so when you've got one or more of these factions in the game, this effect may be even more powerful or useful than it would if you were just sticking to the base 6 factions. But yeah, I mean, it's on the whole, I think this is going to rank probably somewhere in the middle. It's generally pretty good, but it can be situational. So there will be times where
Also,
I didn't really need it, or even if you play it, you're like, well, I guess that means I'm playing Dr. Yui and no cards because I'm looking at your battle plan and it looks awful and I've got no recourse. But yeah, go ahead, Malister.
one thing to note about the wording that it says anyone's player entire battle plan, meaning you don't have it doesn't have to be your opponent, right? It can be somebody else at the moment, like your ally. You can help your ally out with this advanced grammar, right?
Yeah, or stop a win. If somebody completely unrelated is in a game-winning battle or determining, like, all right, if the Harkonnens and the Emperor are going to win this battle, so I'm going to play this for the guild who is going to be fighting them and let them benefit from seeing the whole battle plan, so that they're like I maybe I could win this battle, but there's so much uncertainty. I'm not sure what I should play. Maybe I have Poison Tooth, or maybe I've got Artillery Strike, and now's a good time to figure that out. So some of those expansion cards, I think, also it can have an effect on the efficacy of the once per game advantage. All right, let's take a look at Harkonnen Notorious, one that I suspect is going to rate very highly. But this one, what they get to do, and we've clarified for everyone's benefit, although to the chagrin of some, that sometime before you've moved off of the end of the bidding phase, you get to take another faction's hand, their entire hand. You're basically adding it to your own hand, but what you're doing is you're looking at their cards. You're deciding which of their cards that you would like to have, and you're taking them. And then when all is said and done, you are returning the same number of cards that you took from that faction. So normally when you're going to play this is when somebody has a full hand, somebody that you suspect has a very good hand. Maybe Atreides. They seem like a good faction to play, to do this too. So yeah, you may have a full hand of 8 cards as Harkonnen, and you've played the Karama, so you'll be down to 7. You take Atreides 4 cards, and then you end up giving them, hopefully, if you're Harkonnen, you're giving them a bunch of worthless cards, maybe weather control or harvester or something like that, and taking all their weapons and defenses and anything else good that they have. I say chagrin because I know that in the days of yore, it was very common for the Harkonnen player to do this in the battle phase. So they were like, all right, great. I've now that I know who I'm battling and where, this is when I'm going to decide to use it. But the original designers decided that they wanted to limit these things to specific and what they felt was the most appropriate phase. And they thought that the bidding phase was the best time for that to happen. Keep in mind, as was mentioned, this is an advanced game effect, which means that it was not something that was originally designed by the original designers. It was added by Avalon Hill. And in their desire to contribute to the design of Dune as one of the optional rules things, which became an advanced rule element in the 2019 edition of Dune. For me, I mean, it's because it's a once per game thing, and you need to have a Karama card to do it. In my playing of the Avalon Hill version, we maybe saw this happen a handful of times. And I can't really remember exactly when it was, but it may have been battle phase as often as it was bidding phase. Bidding phase, it's fresh in your mind because that's when you know how many cards everybody has. It's the only phase where that is technically public information, the bidding phase. Like, how many cards do you have? You have 4 cards. Oh, great. I'm going to play this Karama now. And I'm going to get rid of my Balisette and my La La La, and I'm going to take your Snooper and your Shield. But yeah, let's get some other feedback. What do you guys, this one, you love it when you're Harkonnen and you hate it when you're anyone else. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Oh yeah, when you were able to use it in battle phase, it was you just got in a fight with the same faction in 2 or 3 different spots, and then playing that card, you would just give them cards that don't counter yours, and you just win all the fights, which just made it insta win. And the reason why people this change is made is because Harkonnen is just the faction most likely to get a Karama out of all the factions.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think as in terms of the frequency with which a faction gets to use its once per game Karama, Harkonnen's clearly at the top there. They get to do it. Even with CHOAM, with more cards, as we'll see when we look at their effect, the effect is not something that they're like, "Ooh, I can't wait to do this." So it is a little bit tempered. It's not as powerful by a pretty good margin as the other ones are. It's one that they don't often even need to do, but if they do need to do it, at least it gives them that recourse, which we'll get to in a moment here. But yeah, I think once when you do limit this to the bidding phase, which is this one here, then if you're the faction that was affected by it, you at least have some recourse when you get to shipping a movement. You'd be like, well, I can't do all of the battling I was going to do, or I'm kind of a target. So maybe I flee to the polar sink, or I refrain from spending a lot of spice and shipping down into strongholds where I know I'm just going to get my butt kicked, especially if it's by the Harkonnens. So I think in some ways it seems like it's a fairer outcome to limit it in bidding phase. So for me as a player, I don't really have an issue with doing that. I've definitely spoken to people who were very annoyed by that change in the FAQ about when you can do these things. But these are bloodthirsty people, and they're not to be trusted anyway. So yeah, I mean, I think it's brutal. It's a brutal freaking effect, and so I mean, every once in a while, the Harkonnen, they choose poorly. They're like, oh, I picked a guy who does not have anything good, he's full hand and nothing good. But more often than not, they're getting some good stuff, and they are giving you crap. So yeah, Jaded, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, it must be said, even with the bidding phase restriction, it's still a darn good effect. It's really
Yep.
strong. Easily, I would say, in the top three of all the effects because it's that good.
Yeah.
I I want to suggest another use of the Harkarama that is probably rare, but I think it's really neat. Like the effect doesn't put any limitations on who you play it to. So you can just play it against your ally and effectively exchange cards between you two. And
I've
no one
never
is none the
seen.
wiser.
I've
When
never
it
seen that happen.
was when it was allowed in the battle phase, I did once have my Harkonnen ally use it on me to give me the cards I needed to win a crucial fight.
Now
But
it's a bit more complicated for sure, but
yeah,
like in a base game without CHOAM or Richese where card the card is stuck to on you effectively. I I can see it if you trust enough your ally. Like it's turn 9, you're just going for the Hail Mary, otherwise guild wins or something. I can totally see some wild plays be done with the Harkarama used that way.
Yeah, I do like it. I think that's a fun application. I actually used it once on my ally to punish him for not doing what I wanted him to do in the previous turn, and no nexus occurred, so I was stuck with him and all my forces in the tanks. He didn't. Yeah. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna punish you for this. So I took all his good cards, and then I was like, well, I got to spend the next 2 turns just trying to get my forces out of the tanks and get back up to speed. So I lost all of my good weapons and defenses in that last round. So I took yours, and we didn't win. But yeah, I think it's an interesting way. I think it's a clever. It's not an exploitation. It's not necessarily a loophole. But yeah, it's making the best of, especially if you get in a game with Ixians and Atreides where they've got so much card knowledge, and you do want to mess them up. So they're like, all right, nobody knows who has this card and that card, or I've got 3 snoopers, so I need to get rid of one of these, and I'd much rather have a shield so that I've got some options. And so yeah, with Harkonnen, especially when they've got 6 or more cards, they want to optimize that as much as possible. And if they've got worthless cards and their ally is CHOAM, I mean, they can trade cards already, but that's an interesting way to be like, here, let me give you 3 worthless cards and you give me something I can use. Same thing with Richese. Like, I've bought 2 of these Richese cards. I'm going to give them to you so that nobody knows who has them, and then you could give them back to me later on. And so that would be an interesting play. Normally, though, you're like, you know what? Let's deprive somebody of something good rather
Yeah.
than just optimize. But if
Especially
nobody has any good cards, then you're like, you know what? This is burning a hole in my pocket. So let's just do this.
especially like to use it when somebody like says publicly, I have a Karama that I'm willing to sell to stop the win attempt, or like I have a Karama that's in use to stop the voice, or something similar, and you're like, "Ah, I'm gonna use my Karama to get your Karama back."
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's go on to the Fremen. So the Fremens, basically what they get to do is they get to play the Karama to call a sandworm. It's you place the sandworm token in any territory, and it's treated as if drawing a sandworm in that phase. You got to play that in the Spice Blow and Nexus phase. That's one of those things where we're like, that makes the most sense. That's when those normally occur. I know that there were some people who are like, yeah, we want to be able to do this in shipping and movement. You just shipped into Haga Basin or moved there, and I want to play the Karama to just eat those guys up. And it's an interesting effect. But yeah, I think most people, one, if you're playing the Fremen and you've got a Karama card, you're probably using that Karama card for getting a free card from the Treachery deck, or stopping someone else's advantage. I have not seen the Fremen use their Karama very often. I think maybe once, twice at the most in over 30 years of playing Dune. Let you guys, go ahead.
I think, Jack, if I remember correctly, you and me once won a game we played together where I was Fremen, I played the Karama to get a Nexus, we allied, and then won that turn.
Well, I'm not going to
I
argue
think
with you. If it ended up with us winning Melister, then it's probably true.
That's
I
that.
do agree that it's like the bottom tier, if not even below it. It's 99% of the time you're wasting a crown if you use it that way. There's so many other things you could use it for, especially as Fremen, being so poor, so desperate to, especially early on.
Yeah, I would be more
You
likely
need
to
other
use
stuff.
that Karama to give my ally half price shipping than I would be for
100%.
the once per game effect. So that could stand to be
100%.
jazzed up. I think if there's ever a second edition, this is one of the ones
And there's
that I
definitely
expect
potential
to
for
reload.
interesting
Go ahead.
things.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I think so.
It's all not the Tamper card is it's almost the same as the Tamper card in my opinion for the Fremen,
Yeah.
except hey, when you finally manage to remember and like you needed to form a nexus after Sandrout came up, you know, it's good.
It's good, yeah.
It's
But I
it, it-
think
it's good if you're already in a good position. You already have good cards. You're not deep into the tanks, but your main problem is board presence. You
yeah.
don't have a lot of forces and strongholds. Because honestly, one of the best parts about being a Fremen is if you are in a good position, you've just collected spice, and then a worm shows up, and now you can contest two, maybe even three strongholds in a turn. If you can worm right into Carthag, and then you ship into Tabor and move from Carthag to Erechim later on, like that's where it gets kind of crazy. But really, board presence has to be your only problem, because that's the only thing this really fixes. And at the same time, board presence is kind of your speciality as Fremen, so
Yeah,
it patches a hole that you usually don't have.
its effectiveness is even more edge casey than any, and all of these are going to have a certain edge case element to them. But I think the Fremen one is the most. They're like the stars really have to be in a certain alignment for you to say, "Oh yeah, I should definitely use that Karama right now for this purpose." And yeah, you have to be like, you know what? If there was a worm right now, this could set us up for a win, and it's not very often where that's going through your mind.
Mhm.
All right, let's zip along. The Emperor one. Use the Karama to revive a leader, one of your leaders for free, or up to three. Is it three forces? Am I remembering that? Let's look at the rule book here.
You may as well run up to 3 forces or 1 leader for free. Yeah.
So this is okay. I mean, we'll rank these. The Emperor only has a one free revival, but the Emperor is the Emperor, and they usually have a lot of spice. If Count Fenring has been killed or traitor called, early on, and you're like, well, there goes my best leader, and no Tleilaxu in the game. Unless I'm picking up that Gola treachery card, I'm probably not going to see him again. But you're like, now you've got the option to get him out with the Karama, which you're slightly more likely to end up with than the Gola card by virtue of the fact that there are two Karamas in the game. The three forces, again, and there is an FAQ entry, I think, that says that does not mean you can get a second Sardaukar for free that turn or revived at all. So this was another one that is fairly limited and doesn't necessarily something that the Emperor is going to need to do very often. But yeah, what is your wisdom?
I've seen it in total, a grand total of 3 times in all the games I've ever played. It's a go. It's worse than a gola, effectively. Both because Akurama has so many other uses, and because you only get 3 forces instead of 5 for free.
Yeah.
It's super situational. It's extremely situational. When it's good, it's good. But otherwise, you may as well just take away voice, take away prescience, take away traitors or leader stealing from Harkonnen. There's so many things. Plus, with Tleilaxu, you can just make a deal with them. You can just talk to them and see if they are if they're, I don't know, benevolent and want to lend you a leader for some spice or whatever. Generally speaking, you can just get away that way rather than wasting or using, maybe not wasting, Akrama for such a basic quote unquote effect.
Yeah.
I like it
It
as
use it
a
use. No, go
I
ahead.
like it as a insurance policy. Like if I buy one of these, it's like okay, well I'm just gonna go in and start a fight this turn and see what happens. It's just that every time I've follow that train of logic, I end up winning the fight and not needing to revive a leader. So, I mean, hey, take from that what you will, but it is always nice to know that you can go into a fight and worst comes to worst, play your best leader and revive him.
Yeah, that's usually what's going to have to happen for me to do it. All right, we're going to look at the guild one. So this one's kind of a doozy. The guild play a Karama card. They can stop a player from making an off-planet shipment. So they won't have any effect on the Fremen. But somebody else is like, yeah, I'm getting ready to ship down into Carthage, and then I can move into Tabor or Arakeen, and the guild is like, you're not shipping at all, and that pretty much hoses whatever your plans were for that turn, and I've also seen that very effective, especially if you're playing advanced. That means the guild is going when they want to go, and so maybe they get into a stronghold and they block it, and then the next player who's like, well, I can, I'm going after them, I can attack them into 2x, and you're like, no, you're not going to be able to do that at all. And so yeah, it really sets up. This is a Karama effect that very often leads to guild victory, and every time I've seen the guild use it, they've ended up winning.
That's what I was about to say. Whenever I've seen it happen where like I got a 50-50 shot at beating the fight in Arakeen, but I have no shot at winning if I also have to fight a 2x. So I've seen people lose that 50-50 shot. But on average, like it's a game winning Karama. It's very niche though.
Yeah.
But it happens. Especially turn one. Like if turn one, usually I don't know how many people that watch actually play the full advanced rule set. Like often you have like a sneaky guild win in the beginning where like turn one, turn two, people forget that the guild actually gets a turn to ship, and they sometimes just tend to like just win sneakily because people leave 3 strongholds open for them, right? Because they start at 2x, and then they like leave Habanya open, and then they doom stack somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they tend to win, and this helps with that sneaky win.
It's great if your biggest competition for winning is someone going later in the turn. That is to say, like, if you're going to go for a win, the person who's best poised to stop you, because they're going last or second last, you Karama their shipment, and now they can't stop you, and all the other players who might have reacted to this, all the players are like, they could stop guilds, I'm sure they'll be fine. Now can't do anything because they passed their turn, and then you can win, hopefully uncontested or minimally so.
Especially if those 2 players were about to throw a fight, where like the first person ships in one, and then they made a binding deal where the second player would ship in another one, and they would just throw the fight so you couldn't win because they are blocking the stronghold. To then play the Karama and say, no, second person, you're not allowed to go there. I'm gonna beat that one force in Siege Tabar
with 10.
It's like it's a game warping Karama. It's extremely strong, and
yeah,
it's a huge threat. And I've seen every single time someone plays it, just the entire table groaning and knowing, well, okay, I guess it's over. I guess it's time to pack and take the keys to my car or something. It's that strong.
However,
Probably too strong, but yeah.
One thing to note, when it comes to Guild and Fremen, there are the 2 factions in the base game, and even if you compare it to the expansion, that are least likely to get a Karama in the first place, because they don't have card knowledge info or a good advantage that gets them card like the other factions do. So when the guild gets a Karama, it's usually,
it's big.
You deserve it.
Yeah.
My opinion.
All right, then we have our final base game faction is the Bene Gesserit, but they actually do not have a once per game Karama effect. And in fact, if you look at the rules, they're not even listed in there. But it's a little bit offset by the fact that they can use worthless cards as Karama cards. So they're more likely to have Karama capabilities at their fingertips. So they don't get a once per game super effect. And I think that's kind of fun, and I'm okay with it, and I wouldn't change that if this goes through another edition. I would just say, yep, that's how it is. When they get a bona fide Karama card in their hand, they're just like, well, I guess I'm getting a free card or half price shipping or stopping someone else's advantage. And it should be pointed out that Karama can't stop a Karama advantage. You can't be like, nope, you're not doing that, which is interesting. And especially because some of these are like, it's like, can I Karama Atreides from using their once Karama if I'm just Karamaing their thing? But yeah, in our Council of Knives discussions, and I'm sure that the FAQ fully reflects that, but that was where they landed on that. Was like, no, you can't. It's once per game. Nothing stops that. It's just going to happen. So
I've seen CHOAM try and stop a advanced Karama from Harkonnen with their worthless cards.
well, CHOAM, they play by their own rules, don't they?
Yeah, they
With,
always
um,
do.
But yeah, so
That was the time I find out that CHOAM's once per wordless card doesn't mean you are forced to discard the Karama card. You just can't play it, so you keep it.
right. Yes.
So it's
Kul
like,
Wahad, right?
Indeed.
All right, so now we're into the expansion faction. So we'll just keep going down the line. So the Tleilaxu one is that they use a Karama. They can prevent a player from performing any kind of revivals for that turn, and I think by and large this is a pretty minor effect. It'll be a bigger effect on the Fremen. They're looking forward to their 3 free revival. Reviving leaders is just not something that happens very often. Certainly more often when the Tleilaxu are in the game, potentially. But it's mostly for the forces. But the free revival, maybe the guild, which is they got a lot of forces in the tanks, so they were going to get their 1 for free, and they were going to pay to get 2 more. It's even that is like, okay, we've got the. In fact, frankly, I've seen the CHOAM use la 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 to prevent free revival. I've seen that happen more often than I've seen this happen, and it's practically as effective. So it's not a super strong effect, and it's something that I think would probably change in another edition. But let me hear from the wise guys. What are you guys your thoughts on the Tleilaxu's advantage?
I feel it has parts of Fremen being most of the time Tleilaxu has better uses of the Karama, and parts of guild that when it happens that faction is down.
Yeah.
If
They were
it's
already
key
in a
moment-
bad position, and now
yeah,
it's
like
worse.
if they really needed those revivals, like withdrawing that ability from them is devastating. It can literally be game losing for the rest of the game for them. It's not necessarily helping Tleilaxu directly.
No, and in
It's
fact,
more
they're
hindering
losing
someone
income. They're going to lose some
Exactly.
income from doing it at a minimum 1 spice. But if somebody was like in the guild example, they were going to spend probably 4 more spice to get their maximum number, and in fact, it could be more if the Tleilaxu raised the revival rate to 5. That's a lot of income that they are leaving on the table by using this. So I don't think I've ever seen the Tleilaxu do this. I know that I've never done it because I'd much rather have the spice, even though they're like, all right, you're getting three forces out of the tanks. I was like, well, but I'm getting some money, so I'm going to see if I can make that work more than what you're doing. You can make that work? So yeah, it's one. This would have to be a real edge case. And the thing is that the player that you're playing it on, they're probably already at enough of a disadvantage that it's not like, all right, I'm stopping you from the win. I mean, certainly it's not impossible, but if it were to be really effective, maybe they've got a lot of forces on the planet and they were hoping to get 3 or however many out of the tank so that they've got a decent amount with their reserves to do something that turn. So perhaps you are stopping that from happening. But there's a lot of ifs there for that to really be worth it.
maybe now with homeworlds as a thing, maybe it might be there's a niche where you like prevent a player from going back to high thresholds.
That's true.
That could be a niche case.
Yeah, if
I
they're not reviving at all, so like let's say you're occupying it, so Tleilaxu or whoever is occupying that homeworld, the only way they're going to get forces on there to challenge you that turn is through revival. So, barring the guild's presence as well. So that's certainly a good point. More effective in that also edge case.
I also another very weird edge case. Does it affect the alliance ability of the Emperor?
I think it would. I think it would say, look, if you, I mean, you could have a nice long argument about who you're playing that on. Are you playing it on the Emperor so that they can't revive for their ally, or are you playing it on the ally so the ally can't have anything revived? I think the spirit of the effect is that if Harkonnen is the one that needs to get all those forces out, and Tleilaxu is like, yes, I'm playing my Karama so that Harkonnen can't get anything out, whether it's through their own efforts or their ally, the Emperor's efforts. And then you can see, yeah, that is a very effective approach. It stops this alliance from possibly staging themselves if they were going to be able to get, anywhere from 3 to 8 revivals that turn. I mean, certainly the Tleilaxu can limit it to 3, but that's still 6 revivals, 6 forces revived with the Emperor as your ally, and that, getting 6 forces out, that's a pretty good number, even if you had no reserves. You're just like, I'm going to be able to send 6 forces in this turn. That's usually a pretty good number for just about any battle. So that I could see having a much bigger impact, and yeah. But again, it's another thing where, like, all right, the Emperor needs to be in the game, and their ally needs to have a lot of revivals, and then everyone needs to agree that Karama works on Harkonnen and affects all of their forces, which is how I would rule it. But yeah, again, it's still a lot of ifs that need to be in play to make that worth your while as a Tleilaxu to say, yes, I'm doing this. And again, they're leaving a lot of spice out of their coffers when they do that, because, yeah, that could be, I don't know, 10 spice right there.
And then if the Harkonnen happen to have Tleilaxu Golas as a card in their hands, right? Then it's like,
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at the Ixians, the other faction from that expansion. So, with the Ixians, they can use their Karama to move the hidden mobile stronghold, and that is during the shipping and movement. So normally the hidden mobile stronghold, it moves in the storm phase, and it moves after the first turn. It moves before you do the storm. So they get to zip around and harvest any spice that's out there, or just reposition if they want to get somewhere either safer or closer to the action. But if they then after that, you get the spice blows, and you might have 2 nice juicy spice blows, and they've got a Karama card, or they pick one up in bidding. And so when you get the shipping and movement, they say, yeah, I'm going to go and get some or all of that spice. And that does not count as their movement action. They still get to then do a shipping or do a normal movement action with their forces. So that is this is one that I've seen if the Ixians get a Karama card, I think the odds are excellent that that's what they're going to do with that card. They are going to use it for their once per game effect, and they're going to go get a lot of spice. What do you guys say?
I love this one.
I love it. It's most of the time bad, for me at least, but I just find it so incredibly fun to use.
Sometimes when I'm playing Ix and I see a Karama in the starting cards pile, I get this evil temptation in my heart, and my brain says, take the weapon, it's the smart choice, there's no shields. But my heart wants to take the Karama and steal like 16 spice from under someone's nose in a single movement.
Oh yeah, especially if you also see Harvester turn 1. Yeah, I've seen it happen often where I've seen it happen where Shalaga South, like Harkonnen ships in 4 into via 2x into Tleilaxu Cloud to collect all the spice. Ixians just play the Karama, get all 12 spice, and then use that spice to immediately ship. Yes, it's during shipment movement, and you can do it before you have to ship.
Yeah.
Yep, before or after.
Yeah.
So yes, I suspect this is going to go pretty high up on the list. It's very effective, and like with Harkonnen get a Karama card. Them deciding to use it for any other purpose, to me seems pretty slim. But yeah, we'll get back to that. So yeah, Ixian Karama, very effective. That brings us to the CHOAM one. So the CHOAM one, it lets them discard any of their treachery cards, and they get 3 spice for each, even if they discard worthless cards when they're doing it. So the CHOAM can have a hand of 5 cards, and so if one of them is Karama, they could ditch 4 cards and get basically 12 spice for doing it. But this is one of those cases where if they're doing it, it's because they have to be really desperate for the spice, or they're desperate to get rid of cards, maybe so that they can buy better cards. That's a case where and they can do it at any time. So that's, they don't have a phase restriction. So that is what's nice about that effect. So if you're getting into bidding, and let's say they've got a couple of cheap heroes, and maybe they've got some other special cards that they don't necessarily care about. They're like, I don't need family atomics. I'm not interested in blowing up the shield wall. Maybe me and my ally are in Carthag and Arakeen. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just unload all these cards, get the spice, and then use them to buy different cards in the bidding phase. So it can be effective. It's not a terrible effect. It's just not sexy. And because they can sell worthless cards if they need spice. If they have duplicates, they can sell those as well. And having the bigger hand size is much bigger deal than I think a lot of people initially think about. 5 cards, it's only one more than 4, but boy, it makes a difference when you're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get one more card, and now you have even more options. So I think it's an okay effect. Like I said, it's not particularly sexy, but it's also a little bit edge casey, where they're like, yeah, I need to do this. But yeah, the panel.
Well, it is extremely edge because for 1 you need Karama, and for 2 you need to have a card you don't like, which as CHOAM is hard because, like you mentioned, there's so many uses CHOAM has for cards. So when you get to that situation, you're kind of already like losing or down on your luck. Personally, like if I ever got the chance to go back, I would say also get 3 spice for the Karama itself you're discarding that turn. Then I can say, oh yeah, you already have 4 cards or something, and you need like make room for a 5th one. Right?
Yeah.
You can like.
Yeah, I mean,
But
even because of the 5-card hand size, even when you pick up a card like Thumper or Harvester, which isn't necessarily good, or Maul, you're like, I don't know that I'm anxious to play this anytime soon. Because you've got still 4 more cards you can have, you don't, as CHOAM, you rarely feel like, oh, now this is taking up, I got this card taking up one of my slots and of my hand. So it's tempered quite a bit. You'd have to have a number of those cards that are just not going to be useful for you in the immediate future, or you're like really desperate for cash. Maybe you're going through the bad inflation side of your inflation token, where you didn't collect any income, and you're like, well, that was ill-timed because I do need the spice. I need 4 or 5 spice right now. So maybe I sell some cards with the Karama, but I think as CHOAM, I'm typically more likely to want to use that Karama to maybe stop prescience or prevent a leader from being captured, or forcing the Emperor to not get, I don't know, to not use Sardaukar, something like that, I think is more likely use of that Karama card for me. So it's a little more niche. All right.
It's I think it's the worst one out of all of it. That's even comparing it to the Fremen, in my opinion.
Well,
I guess
we
we'll
may
get
have
to that
some
later.
we may have some debate there, but let's get through these last three. So the Richesse one, if they have a Karama card, they can use it to spend. I believe it says 3 spices. We got the page there.
Should do.
Yeah.
Yep, 3 spice.
So 3 spice
Anytime,
to get
3
any.
spice.
Oops, I guess I shuffled that up. Yeah, they can do it at any time. They're going to spend that 3 spice, and then they get to secretly look through their cache of Richesse treachery cards and take anyone they want. So, probably they're not using it to grab yet another Karama card. I don't know why they would do that. So you're most likely looking at Null Entropy probably, or the Stone Burner. But it depends. But those are the hot ticket cards that you, as Richesse, you probably would rather see in your hand than anyone else's. And of course, once you've got that card, if you're in an alliance, you can give it to your ally whenever you want. So, and nobody will know what you've given them. So that's an extra bonus there. If Richesse can get a card, they do have to buy that card. So it's fitting into the theme of Richesse is always struggling with their finances and their taxes. But it can be it feels a little less edge casey, and it's a little bit nice surprise. You have to make an informed decision when you're choosing which of those cards to pick. But depending on where you are in the game and what else is going on, there's usually some pretty clear choices when you do decide to play it.
Yeah, the Richesse Karama is really interesting because they're the only faction in the game that can more or less guarantee they get a Karama card. And so it's almost like, it's basically like step 4 or 5 on the line of, Richesse trying to win the game. If they have a shot at winning, they're probably going to sell themselves a Karama at some point and then use the one's ability to pick up something they need, like Stoneburner or the box. It's basically a part of like strategy. No other faction can really say that. And then once you do that, you're gonna want to buy a Karama card, and then you'll definitely win. Like it's just random, but not for Richesse.
And the nice thing about the Jack just said you would never use the Karama to buy a Karama. The one thing you forgot is that one Karama that's in your cash card, you can give it to your ally at any time. Meaning, if you want your Harkonnen ally to use their once per game advanced Karama,
now you're playing
3D
3D chess, Melister. That's what you should be doing. Form an alliance with Richesse, help them buy the Karama, have them play the Karama to get the Karama, to give you the Karama, so that you can then take the rest of Richesse's hand from them.
Yeah, and nobody will ever have expected that to happen.
Yeah. Not even
Like,
Richesse, to be honest.
Wait a minute. That didn't work out the way I planned it at all. So overall, I think it's a pretty good effect. Yeah, we'll see how that one fares. All right, we're down to our last two. So Ecas, this was an effect that was in the design process one of their advantages for a little while, and we kind of liked it, but for whatever reason, it underwent some changes. But we kept it as the Karama effect. So what they get to do is if they didn't play a weapon or a defense in a battle, they can add the difference between their leader disc and their opponent's leader disc to their numbered dials. So even if that leader is killed, so normally I played, whoever I played, Bindic Narvi or one of the sisters, they get killed, and that you're not adding. You're adding 0. But here with this, it's not all over for you necessarily, especially if you have lucked out with a nice spread between your leader and their leader. You've played your 1 and they played their 6. So you're going to be able to add that 5. And then maybe if your leader is still alive, then, you're getting the 1 as well. But that's something that it's a nice little surprise. So this is something I've only seen this a couple of times. But it was the difference between winning and losing a battle. And the nice part is you get to see the outcome and know whether it's going to be effective before you play it. So that's the one bright spot of here is you're like, oh no, we needed 3 more. Well, look, you're playing Stilgar and I'm playing it too, and so that's going to give me more than 3. And I'm just going to go ahead and play that Karama and Padao. I'm going to win that battle.
I just love this because it exists kind of because of me. I came up with this effect early on in the Ecas design process because I kind of always liked adding differences between things, make something not as certain, so give a little flexibility and allow you to take risks and get rewarded for it. It used to be an ability, then it got removed for several reasons, but I kind of pushed it for it to be at least the advanced Karama. It's not super strong in this version. It used to be way better, but probably too good. But I
I
still think it's
distinctly remember the first game we had it. The Ecas just went on a rampage on the first turn, and
yeah,
they
yeah.
played no weapons or defenses because
The
nobody
first
really had
iteration,
any.
yeah, the first iteration was a little too good. I do agree, but the idea, the core concept is still there, and I still think that even this heavily nerfed version is quite good. It's flexible, especially since you can play it after you see the battle plan already on the table, so you know if it's worth it or not. I
Yeah,
like the flexibility you get. It's not huge. It's not on a massive swing. It's not like you're getting +10 or something, but it's usually enough, especially considering Ecas' leaders are not incredibly good. They are pretty even all around the board, but quite on the low side. So even that +1, 2, if you're lucky, maybe +3, that can really help. It's
mhm.
probably not the best use for Akarama, but when it is useful, it's really useful.
And it can
Yeah,
be used with reinforcements.
that too.
Yep.
I've the biggest thing in the that's the biggest problem with the thing is you say 1 to 3 is like can be big. It usually doesn't really like turn out that well in my opinion because of reinforcements. If you're playing a game where people like kind of have in the back of their mind, ECAS might have reinforcements, or they know you have that Karama, one of the two, they tend to like dial more to like make sure you win even with reinforcements in there. So it ends up not being that relevant, in my opinion. Uh,
Still,
it usually is more like
there's
that.
there's enough times where I seeing that the game, a battle is won because of storm order. We were all,
Yep.
you had 3, I had 3, and that was it. But I'm first in storm order, so I've won that battle. And so, and there you're like, well, great, I'm going to be able to add 1 because that's the difference, and that's all I need, and voila. So, I mean, I guess it again, it's not a super effect, but it is one where because you have it, you don't have to worry about playing it unless you know it's going to be effective. So that it's nice that you've got that information, and otherwise you're like, all right, I guess I can save it. A little bit like how the Emperor is like, well, I'm playing my best leader because I know I can get that leader out for free if I've played poorly in this battle. But here it's not just, you're like, all right, I'm going to turn a loss into a win. And that can have big ramifications. You might not want to lose. You might not have dialed as high because you're like, I don't want to lose this many forces. And I've got this card that I'd really like to keep. And so it's a nice little bit of safety net there as well. And yeah, I mean, if somebody's got the knowledge that you've got that card or that reinforcements is out there, that may factor into it. But I think a lot of players aren't thinking on that level. They're doing the math that they can see, and they're like, great, I need to dial a 4 here. So even if you max dial, I'm gonna win this by 1, or I've got the storm order advantage by being the aggressor. And you can do every battle with the Ecas and dial higher just in case they do have a Karama or they have reinforcements, but I think that becomes exhausting. And so I think most people aren't willing to do it without knowing something like, oh, you know, somebody has reinforcements at this point. And we're like, all right, now we got to worry that it's them. Or there was a Karama out there and Ecas might have it. Then you're maybe more likely to factor that in. But I think most players are just, they're not accounting for the once per game Karama effect. To pull the rug out from under them. I know that you are, Melister. You're always thinking about that, and I think it's your undoing. I think you lose too many forces overall over the course of your entire Dune life. You've overdialed. No, you're usually quite canny in dialing the exact right number, which is very frustrating for many people. Myself at the top of that list, but yeah, I think most people aren't on your level, Melister. They're just like, I just need a 3, and they're like, oh crap, they've got that Karama, and they've just won it by whatever they needed because they played a low leader, or I shouldn't have played such a high leader when I didn't really need to do that. Maybe I should have gone mid so that I can account for that. But yeah, I think that's
and even then, also as Ecas, you need to have like dialed enough, right? If usually when you're about to know you can't win the battle, you don't dial, you don't play weapons, you play your lowest leader. So in order for this drama to be relevant, you need to be like in an even fight where both of you are going all out by actually playing your good treachery cards, actually dialing or risking your spice, and then it can tip the battle. It isn't like a card that just guarantees a win. It only just helps you over that edge.
Yeah, it's definitely one that like tips the scale a little bit in your favor. It doesn't guarantee anything, but can definitely be the little helping hand you may need in some key situations.
There can be some psychological effect as well if you know that they have the Karama, and so you're playing a lower leader than you should have, or you're like, well, I don't have to worry about playing a defense because they're not going to play a weapon if they want to do this, or vice versa, or they play.
Oh yeah,
who knows what if you can overthink it or get hoisted on your own petard.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's with Ecas, right? Like if neither of you have a weapon or defense, right? That's the one problem is if you neither have a weapon or defense, meaning your leader is likely dead, right? And most fact people when they're fighting Ecas, they take into account the fact that their 2-strength leader might live, or their 3-strength leader might live because they might have a shield, they might have, so they tend to like dial in a sense that they account for that 2-3 strength, right? Because you're also their leader lives, right? So if the opponent's 5-strength leader lives, right, that's 5 strength added to the battle, and then it's up against your 2 strength. So you're only adding 3 against the 5, right? The opponent has a 5 strength advantage, and so you only it doesn't win you fights. Like it's really niche because you can't play weapons, you can't play defenses. So if Atreides plays his 5, you play your 2, right? Then the difference is 3. So it's 5v5, like 2 plus 3, 5. Like you're tight. You're literally tying with this Karama if none of you play weapons, if none of you play defenses, which is just really not the case. Usually the opponent plays a weapon, in which case you need to like have a cheap hero, and then your cheap hero just means you're tying. So you still need to like get over it somehow, which is just
dialing definitely becomes a more important element. If Ecas is in that battle and their ally is there as well, then there's another factor here where Ecas is adding their forces, half of those forces at full strength. So it's potentially one more factor that they can do to claw out a win. But I mean it's not. I think it's not overpowered by any stretch of the imagination. All right, let's look at the last one here, Moritani, and then we'll do a ranking. So the Moritani one is pretty straightforward. When they at the end of a battle, they can force their opponent to keep or discard any of the treachery cards that they had in their battle. So if they had, they played a worthless card and Poison Blade, Moritani can say, yeah, you're going to keep the worthless card, you're going to discard the Poison Blade. And that's that. So again, it's another thing. It's more like a finger in the eye, rather than gaining. They're not gaining very much from this. It's more of like, here's my revenge for whatever has befallen. And but it's a unique effect. It's sort of a middling one. I've seen it. It's insult more than anything, which is a little on brand for Moritani. There was discussion in the design process, should they be able to just take those cards, but that felt like it was a little too crazy. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, I've done this as Moritani, and I've seen it once. It's another one where I think it's going to fall in the range of, if Moritani has a Karama card, they're probably more likely to want to use that for the shipping or free card or canceling another advantage than they would for forcing somebody to lose a good card and or keep something that they were hoping to get rid of. So yeah, it's one of those. If you've just had a humiliating defeat and you're just like, I wish there was something I could do here, just to show you how much I don't like what you did to me. Well, there you go. You've got something that you can do. That's mostly what that's there for. But yeah, it's again, like I said, it's not one that happens very often. Even if Moritani got a Karama every game, they're probably only going to do that a fairly small percentage of the time.
It's a weird one. It's as you said, it doesn't help you directly, but it kind of helps the entire table if you can take away one of those big cards, the last gun, the Poison Blade, the Shield Snooper, or something, even the Poison Tooth that they maybe didn't activate, so they would keep it. You just get rid of it immediately. It can really be strong, but doesn't help Moritani themselves. It can just stabilize the entire table, which to some is a win already, but it still requires you to lose the fight in the first place. So it's a recovery in some way. It's just to make the loss a little sweeter, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel very reminiscent of the old Moritani as it used to be, which was a little bit more focused on losing fights.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be brutal, though. It used to be a really mean effect.
OG Moritani was interesting, basically requiring them to lose fights to gain access to terror tokens, which in hindsight was, I don't know how we even thought about it, but hey, it happened. We tested, we tried. But this does feel kind of that way. It requires you to lose to do something potentially big. But it's definitely not like I lose, I instantly play it. It's not that type of Karama. It's one I would think 2, 3, maybe even 4 times about before even showing the Karama.
It's kind of like a martyrdom card. It's like, okay, guys, I'm gonna fall on my sword just to take out the BG's hand, and then now they don't win this turn because they can't win their next fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I could even imagine seeing a Moritani, losing a fight to the player who's going for a win attempt and saying, all right, everyone, I've got a Karama. I'd like 15 spice collectively. I'll use it. And then there's no way they're winning their next fight to win the game, especially if it was potentially hopeless.
Well, the problem with that is if you make that deal right, the other side hears and it's just not going to play the good cards and just gamble on the fact that they can win the fight against you.
Yeah, the idea is you do it once the fight is already lost. You've already seen what they're going to be discarding.
That makes sense. Yeah,
it would definitely vary in reception depending on who your table is. Like, there's some people who just don't negotiate with terrorists and be like, you know what? I'll lose the game. I don't care.
Yeah.
I guess it would have been more useful if you could also keep your cards you played in battle, right? So it would be a double-sided coin. But
that would be a little bit much, I think.
That would definitely be usable.
No. If you compare it to
come in swinging with a Poison Blade Shield Snooper and you can't do anything about it.
I mean, that's their alliance ability, remember?
Yeah. Well, hey, it's only one card. The alliance ability.
But this is a once per game advantage, so it's like, like it's...
Well, I think, like, the funny thing is we had that effect for Moritani themselves, And then we had Moritani kill every single leader of 2 factions because they had Poison Blade, and they kept the Poison Blade every single fight they lost.
Yeah.
And that was not good. that was not fun being on the receiving end of the absolute menace of Moritani. It's a fun card though. It's definitely one that can come up, and when it does, you will remember it for sure.
It's
Nah,
great when you're
it-
using the expansion 1 cards, because that's when you
Yeah.
really see the big ticket items to have people
Yeah.
discard.
Yeah.
I disagree because the expansion one, like the artillery strike poised, they're already like one use already, so it doesn't affect them, right?
Oh, hey,
Uh,
chemistry and Weirding Way, pretty
Yeah, but
sweet cards.
their chemistry and waiting way are like interesting. They're not that they're not really that impactful. I mean, they have their niche. They're not that like sure, like it's nice you can like get rid of a card in the BG hand who has the voice, but against other factions, it's like why use the Karama on that when you could just use it to get back into the game? Remember? Because of all the other things the Karama can do. Why like you lost a fight, right? And you're just going to instead of using your one advantage you have to like buy a card, get some free shipping, win another fight potentially against say somebody with a combat advantage. Like why use this just to annoy the other person unless you get like 10, 15 spies or a free card from the Emperor, right? It's very, very
And
unlike
that's the main pitfall for most once per game Karam abilities is, well, it's the best card in the game, so why wouldn't you just use it for its baked in effect?
For everything else, yeah.
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 And then
it's
on the other
definitely worth
hand, if you
looking at.
make it if you make it too strong though, then it's just like, oh well, I have this
They
card
have
and I
lost.
win, or I don't have it and I don't win.
Yeah. I think we can rank them, and
Yeah.
we
Let's
could
see how
probably
they play out. Let's go ahead and make a line here where the best ones are on the left here, and the ones. Oh, sorry, Fremen.
I mean,
Or Fremen.
I think
these are.
it's a tie.
I think it's a tie. That's for sure. Some.
I mean, we just put the BG all the way over here.
Yeah,
There's
but
it's by
where do you
virtue
rank
of
them?
you being way more likely to get a worthless card than you are to get a Karama, they instantly win. But
or lose,
technically.
depending on whether you define them as having no advanced grammar ability or not. So, like, I think Moritani, considering, like we said, it doesn't win you games at all.
No,
Like,
definitely.
it's the most niche of niche. If you manage to win the game
Probably, yeah.
using advanced Karama, something really strange is happening. Sure, I can make I can
if you're
make a
contesting like
scenario,
5
right?
strongholds, maybe, right? Like
Yeah.
you go and you use it and you make the person who's trying to stop you discard their cards, but I could do what did someone say in a game the other week there? I'm gonna do something better than win. I'm gonna lose.
Yes.
Yeah. That's Moritani in a nutshell, yeah. I
Yeah.
think that this is like dividing into groups where there's some ties. Like these 5 are pretty much around there, I would say. These 5 right here. You can swap the positions themselves, but it's kind of pointless at some point. Can you say really the Emperor is better than Ixian? It depends. It's situational. These are all situational that when played they can be really good, but sometimes you just would rather use something else. These are why you're even thinking about them level of Karama effect, I think. This is
Yeah,
why you're even thinking that is not what are you doing if you're not playing it that way? Same with these two. And Guild is I don't know, maybe a bit closer here, I would say.
Yeah, I would say like the CHOAM and Fremen one, when you read the ability the first time, at least you can immediately say, all right, I can imagine immediately a scenario where this can make or break a game for me, right? Having the ability to move your forces from Tleilaxu south to Erikin guaranteed, or have the ability to force an axis, or just get spice like a Joan, where you like once you read your inflationary token, you can like go and like read it and like there might be a situation where I need spice to stop a win, or I need spice to win. This one though, Moritani, that's like I don't even know when. I can't even like think of a scenario without really trying where that card wins me the game. It might
Oh,
stop a
winning the
game.
game, no. Winning the
Yeah,
game, never.
yeah,
Well,
but
that
it
one
might.
example again,
Yeah,
if you're in your first battle, you can basically neutralize your biggest competition for you and or your ally by throwing that first fight. Especially if you're like, all right, I'm first in turn order, so I've got this ability to. All right, I'm going to fight this battle here in Habanya where I'm purposely going to lose, so that I can whammy them with the Karama. Then you're like, padow, I've taken out, because this player was really hoping to win against me or my ally over here, and maybe, maybe in the Ixian stronghold, and they're my ally there. So, but it's very edge case. Most of the time it is just a screw me, well screw you kind of an effect, and that's really all it's got going for it. And so, yeah, second edition Moritani, the once per game Karama, I think will have more teeth, if we have that opportunity. And likewise, I think these two would probably get a little bit of a boost as well, and we might try something different with the Tleilaxu, possibly the
oh yeah,
Emperor.
Yes.
Yeah,
like
The
the class
Tleilaxu
is
is
one of
like,
those
it's right.
things that
It's. I would put it
like,
right in the middle
B
because it
point
can be
five.
really fucked. Yeah, B.5, yeah.
like,
I
like,
would
And
like
almost
and
switch these. I managed to stop a win once with the CHOAM Karama. I think
yeah.
it was one of those games after they got revealed and we cobbled together a usable version. And
oh
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
discarded my entire hand to get like 12 or 15 spice, which is what I needed to dial someone out and stop them from winning.
Well,
So,
you
I
can't get
mean,
15,
I've
right?
never
But
stopped a win with the BT Karama. So,
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah. The BT trauma is like when you read it, you're like, all right, if somebody has all their leaders in the tanks, I can stop them from getting a leader, which is nice. Right, that's the one time where you can think of where Tleilaxu is immediately useful.
oh yeah, yeah.
Show
No, it's
you can like, I can get money. Money is good.
yeah, it's.
money is always good.
I would be tempted to move these like onto S, and
I
PG
would
just not
definitely move Harkonnen to S.
not
Like,
not rated. Richesse
That's
would
pretty
move on
fair.
to S for the simple reason that it's so meta defining. The literal best
yep.
play for Richesse is to get a Karama from their stash, sell it, buy themselves, then buy Stoneburner whenever they need it.
I could live with
And
that because these factions actually, like worthless cards, easy for BG to buy.
yeah,
Harkonnen, they're getting an extra card off the top, so you can't really stop them from getting a Karama if fate wills it. And then Richesse, they can sell one when they're rich. So
and
I think S is kind of defined by their more likelihood to get a Karama in the first place.
Guild is
Yeah,
just extremely game warping. It's just so good.
Very
As we
good.
said, like you play it, you win.
yeah,
That's that simple.
there's a big difference between Harkonnen and with chess, right? With chess, Advanced Karama, you have to pay to get a single treachery card that's game defining. With
Yeah, yeah, of
Harkonnen,
course.
you don't have to pay, but you can get the game defining card from somebody else while simultaneously getting that person out of the game. So it does two
Mhm.
things.
Completely
Either,
kneecapped. Better yet, sell info on their hand to everyone
mhm,
else. Just
yep.
really rub salt into the wound.
Yeah.
Like with chess, if you play Advanced Scramble for chess, you have to guess that the stone burner you get or the what's the one that allows you to get a card out of the trash, the no 3 box, right?
The box.
Yeah.
The box that the stone burner actually is able to like beat the faction you're about to be fighting, right? Like the nice
I
thing
mean,
about with chess,
that's
for example, it blocks BG voice, because if BG voice you something like do not play, like you can play the advanced Karama after the BG
yeah.
voiced you.
At any time is really really good. This is
Yeah,
just that alone makes Richesse Karama really strong. Guild, I think it
yeah,
deserves to be really high. I don't know if S, but definitely high.
yeah.
This
The
sort of
any
right
time
here
with chess is
is
good. Harkonnen is of course like currently doing bidding, but then again for chess, you need to pay 3 spice.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, it's an upside, yeah, for sure. It's definitely something you need to keep in mind. I've seen Richese players wanting to use it and being one spice short and just despairing themselves. That cost is not to be forgotten, that's for
Mhm.
sure.
Really,
The
I think the only
B,
thing holding Guild back is the that it's going to be tough for them to get it.
yeah,
I can't put my finger on exactly what mechanics contribute to it, but I feel like Guild always buys the worst cards. It's
I know
just
it's
fate.
same.
If there's a worthless card, Guild's got
They
like an
get it.
80% chance of buying it.
It's
it's
incredible. I don't know.
the biggest reason is just from all the factions, the Spacing Guild and the Tleilaxu, and are just the two factions that need treachery cards the most because they have the least amount of opportunity to get their advantages. Don't interact with treachery cards at all. Like Fremen, well, is also in that triage of people that don't interact with treachery cards, but Fremen just have better combat. Like they don't spend spice. They just have enough spice to like pay for treachery cards constantly and just cycle through them. Like the guild and the Tleilaxu, like they start with 5 spice at the start of the game, right? So turn one, their max bid is 5. Like,
Mhm.
oh, it's brutal to like be able to like only bid 5 on a single treachery card turn one,
Yeah,
while there are like factions like Ecas or Moritani
Ecas
that
and
can bid
Moritani
12,
12. It's incredible. Yeah. But
and you don't
this
have knowledge, so it's like oof.
this B group, I think they're all pretty even. They can be switched around quite independently. It's up to taste, I think.
Mhm.
They are good, but situational, really situational in when they can be good.
Yeah.
If you get a Karama, I would not immediately consider using the special. I would really think twice, 3 times before saying, yeah, I commit to it.
I
Maybe
still think Ecas is C tier. That's my opinion because it's so
I
niche
would
to actually win
I would
fights.
put I would put it right here
Like
in the middle because when it happens, as Jax mentioned, just the psychological aspect really is important here. I've
yeah, but
seen
like it
players
needs to
think, no,
it needs to be relevant, but it's only relevant in situations where you can afford not to play a weapon or a shield and still win,
oh
right?
yeah, if
Because
you want to play it, yes. But I've seen
so it's
people
so
know that Ecas have a Karama and just
yeah,
be scared of it. Just
Yeah,
know
the
that it's
thing
an
it's
option.
good
it's
for when you want to
people.
overdial your opponent, but the great thing with Ecas is that occupy advantage means that usually they're getting a pretty decent buff, like maybe +2 or 3, plus whatever they have there to dial with. And
Yeah,
then if you can call the leader, you can get another 2 or 3 maybe buff to your forces. And
yeah,
then
but
again, you can even
uh,
play it with reinforcements since it doesn't count as a weapon or defense.
It's
right,
it's
but it's just too many eggs that have to like align for the ECAS to even win you fights in the first place. You need to be able to dial more than your opponent. You need to have your leader live because if your 2 strength leader dies against their 7 strength leader and you play this card, it only adds back 5, if that makes sense, right? You
yes,
only
you don't have the
so
two
just
strength. Yes.
you don't have the 2 strength that your leader was, right? And if that the opponent knows this, if the opponent just psyched you out and just played their 2, right, instead of their Stilgar or their, you know, then like you don't even. It's so
Yeah,
niche.
It's tough,
it's
but it's
really,
also unexpected, which is a
yeah,
big thing.
it's
And I would
Yeah, but
definitely put it over the CHOAM and the Tleilaxu one any day.
maybe not with this. Maybe not with maybe they're right in the middle then. Like it's definitely not as
it's
good as Emperors or Atreides, but I don't think it's as bad as Tleilaxu's or Shows.
So yeah,
it's also
your mileage is going to vary, and again, in certain situations where you'll be like, "Oh, this is clearly better," or
Yeah.
"This is," and so you're like, "Oh, this was great." This was the game-winning effect. So yeah, some of these have their potentials. In some cases, that potential is a little bit more um, astronomical, but with I guess with these over here, it's clearly it's a matter of if you've got the Karama card, you are extremely likely to use it for that once per game effect. With the B on through D, and I would say that they're almost certainly going to use that for the movement too. But everybody else, you're probably at least just as likely to use deck Karama for any of its other effects than these factions would. So yes, if you have made it through this whole video, let us know if you agree with this ranking, or with the rationale behind it, or what are your thoughts? Is there anything that that you've noticed in your gameplay or and whatnot that we didn't cover that might influence how one or more of these factions would play out? And what sorts of things would you want to see if there were any changes to these once per game effects? Feel free to chime in on the comments with those thoughts as well. I think we're going to leave it there for this one, and I want to thank the guys for participating in this battle language. And yeah, I look forward to another discussion. Let us know in the comments too what else you'd like to have the battle language team approach and tackle. That's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.